Guys, good morning. Welcome to Real Talk. It's Jerry Miller. It's great to be with you. We love this program, Real Talk, an insider's guide to real estate across Charlottesville, Albemarle County, and Central Virginia. Powered by the Yes Team Realtors, Keith and Yonna Smith, your choice for buying and selling homes across the Commonwealth and Central Virginia. Today's program, a fantastic one. The Smiths have welcomed a rock star to the program. Anthony's the executive director of the Thomas Jefferson Area Coalition for the Homeless. He will join us in T-minus 20 seconds or so. Before we get to Anthony, Judah, why don't we start with a two-shot and welcome our good friend, Keith Smith, to the show. Keith, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. I didn't realize I was limited to 20 seconds, though.
No, you can talk as much as you want. You the boss, dog.
Oh, that's right.
How's it? That's right.
So before we get to introducing our dear friend Anthony, tell me about your trip out to San Diego.
Oh, it was awesome. Let's see. The keynote was fabulous. We did a keynote on social.
Wasn't that you?
Yeah, I did a good job. Okay. We're going back next year every 90 days for a keynote. We had real estate investors across the country, and they wanted to hear the story of how we went from 0 to 5 million and using social, digital, and mobile.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a big thing. We're excited. Yonna and I are excited for you.
Thank you. I've learned a lot from you and from Real Talk.
Well, I'll send you a check. No, hold it. Take it back. I'll send you
the other way around.
I haven't had enough caffeine yet.
Cheers, amigo. Cheers.
Cheers.
Let's go to the studio camera. Introduce our guests.
Yeah, so our two guests are my lovely Better 7/8.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
And
How are you? Good morning.
a gentleman named by Anthony Haro, and if I mispronounce the name, I apologize in advance.
You got it right.
Yeah, thank you. I've been trying to get Anthony on this show for quite some time. Anthony has the misfortune of sitting in a couple of boards, and one of them I chair, and we just...
So you hear him talk?
I do, yes, definitely. But it's an honor and pleasure to work alongside you, Keith.
Oh, he does.
And
I
I
give
pay
him coffee for that?
I paid him a lot of money. So.
He bought breakfast.
I was expecting more for $150, but I'm just saying. Just saying.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Keith. Thank you for bringing me on.
So one of the things that are near and dear to my heart, and we've talked about this on the show a few times. Those who know, I'm a vet. And Anthony is about ready to roll out a pretty aggressive and smart, in my opinion, program for the homeless veterans. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to you and then let Anthony introduce himself, and then we'll ask some questions.
I love it. So we start all our programs with what makes you tick. I guess the who, what, when, where, and why of Anthony. The show is yours.
All right. Well, I'm Anthony Haro.
Okay.
That's the who. And I like that question of what makes me tick. That's pretty good. But let's see. I am just... So what matters to me is, I think, as humans, our innate ability and I think birthright to feel peace and contentment. And whatever that may mean for us and, the different personalities we may have, the different paths we may take, I want to be able to help others find that place. And in my experience, that stability and safety of housing is just really a key component to helping someone be able to find that place in their own lives, as difficult as it may be, even with housing. But without it, it's just so difficult, I think. So that's kind of what makes me tick, is I really want to support other people's growth, but also just that ability to be content with life and being peaceful. And so housing really grabbed me. Homeless services really grabbed me because it was a way to really connect with people and be able to support that evolution in others and in myself. So that's kind of what brought me to this work. And outside of that, I love music. I play guitar. I play
Nice.
do music production on my computer. Play around town a little bit. We'll see. Maybe play some more. Who knows? But that keeps me sane as well on the side.
Cool.
And yeah, I'm just dedicated to. And another thing is I really feel in Charlottesville we have the right pieces in place, the right resources. to actually get ahead of this issue of homelessness in a meaningful way. It's difficult when you say ending homelessness because I think it's hard for people to relate to what that means. But when we qualify it, I think it's actually very, very realistic. And so I know it's possible. And moving here about 2 years ago to work in homeless services, I was really excited about the prospect because it's really possible for places like Charlottesville. Bigger cities right now are having a huge issue with homelessness, as you've probably seen from the news. But I think it's really possible in places like Charlottesville to really get ahead of the issue. And so that's exciting. We can totally do it.
Love it.
Good.
What intrigues you about Anthony?
Just the fact that the message is a unique message that goes along pretty much with the human element that I guess both Keith and I are also trying to go ahead and live by as far as a life principle is concerned. So contentment is one of the things that I heard you say. Happiness is another component. And I think the right for everybody to have a safe place, I think that probably is also something that kind of drew me to that message in Anthony.
Yeah,
So,
definitely agree. Housing is a human right,
It
I
is.
believe.
It is.
And so,
That's part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yep.
Right?
Right.
Safety and security.
Yep.
yeah.
I mean, having a home over your head is
Yeah.
Yep.
paramount to you having success and quality of life.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And, the funny thing is that unfortunately, there still is a pervading idea around homelessness that
Stigma.
Stigma.
it's a stigma,
Yeah.
that it's someone's fault, because of the choices that they've made in their lives. And, outside of that issue, it's just so hard to get other things going if you don't have a safe place to sleep at night. You don't
Sure.
have a way to take a shower. And
Sure.
we expect people to really make these sweeping changes in their lives when it's difficult to do that when you already have a place to stay. But if you don't,
Sure.
it's just stacked against you in a way that's not tenable, I think, for most people. So that idea of people, really needing to change or make changes to get out of homelessness and then earn or deserve housing is just a flawed way of thinking. Everyone deserves housing regardless. And the research shows that actually when you do that, it's called housing first. Treatment, recovery, employment, all of those things work so much better if someone has a place to stay at night. And they work a lot less well if you don't have a place to sleep at night. So the research shows that it's the right way to go to.
So you mentioned the word stigma.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what they are and how we can debunk some of those. So
Sure.
folks who may be watching can look at it a little bit differently. Everybody has a very specific opinion about this subject matter. And one of the things we try to do on this show, at least we hope we do, is to try to kind of simplify some complicated
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And this is surely a complicated subject. So, so what would be the stigmas, and then what would be the actual fact that counteracts that stigma? Does that make sense?
Dude,
Sure.
Nice question, baby. That's good.
He's learning.
I'm learning.
That is a good question.
Yeah, well, I'm going now. I'm done. Because that's about as good as it's going to get.
That was very good. It's a very good question, and it is complicated. I'll do my best. I think some of the stigmas are homeless people are lazy,
Yeah.
don't want to get a job. They could just get a job and end their own homelessness. They could just, there's a huge stigma about substance use, about mental illness. Those are probably the biggest ones, right? Lack of interest in maybe finding work. People just need to get clean, stop using drugs, or start taking, medication. Those are probably the biggest ones that we see. And so the reality is something obviously more complicated. Sure. And I think the best way to explain it is something that's really interesting I've found doing this work is that most people who experience homelessness, you'd never really even know. So I think the data shows locally it's about 70% of people who fall into homelessness experience homelessness for less than about 2 weeks. They might stay in a shelter for a few nights, but then with their own resources, with their own social networks, they get out of it. They get back into housing. And that's great. We want to empower people to be able to do that as much as we can. So the interesting thing is that homelessness is a lot larger than anybody probably usually thinks about. And what people usually do think about when it comes to homelessness is what they see on the downtown mall, maybe on the corner near UVA. And that's largely what we consider to be chronic homelessness. These are folks who have disabling conditions and have been homeless for a long time, long periods of homelessness, sometimes 10 or more years on the streets. And so because folks who are chronically homeless have these complicated health issues and have such a long history of homelessness, a lot of times they don't use shelters. And so they're out in the public. They don't have a place to go during the day because they don't have a home. And so it's visible, right? And that's what people associate with homelessness as a whole, right? But really, that's only a relatively small portion of the homeless population. And so that's why sometimes those stigmas get attached to the whole community, because it's the most visible part of the community. For people who are chronically homeless, mental illness and substance abuse are prevalent. They are. But again, that's just a subset of the homeless population. The chronically homeless folks do represent some of the most vulnerable people in our community, though. And TJACH, or Thomas Jefferson Area Coalition for the Homeless, which is a lot to say, so we just simplify it to TJACH a lot of the time. One of our focuses is on ending chronic homelessness, because those folks are at the highest risk of dying on the streets. But those are some of the stigmas, and that's kind of, I think, why those stigmas exist, is because it's the most visible part of homelessness. But most people, you'd never even know. And yeah. Does that answer your question, Keith?
Yeah.
I think
You're the
it's
pro,
definitely
man. I liked it. That was a great question. I think just as a, go ahead.
I realized I wanted to add another thing, too.
Go, sure. We have an hour, so.
No rules here.
Well, the other thing I wanted to talk about, too, was that a lot of times communities get caught up with wanting to address homelessness, and then they try to address those kind of stigmas. So, for instance, we see, a community might say, oh, there's a lot of people homeless panhandling on the downtown mall or wherever it may be. Let's get some job programs for them, right? Or let's do more outreach and try to get mental health services for them. Those are all really important steps. I'm not saying they're not important. They are absolutely vital to the picture. But they are an indirect way of getting to the issue. If someone's experiencing homelessness, that's a housing issue. And that's where we should, as a community, address the issue first, not some of the symptoms of homelessness. So that's a common fallacy that we see a lot, and I think it perpetuates this stigma as well, where if we were just to provide supportive housing up front for folks on the streets, and then those wraparound services in housing, that's the most successful way. It's been proven through data time and time again. It is not a mystery how to end homelessness. It's just sometimes a mystery of how to get the resources together to actually provide those resources to the scale that we need. But it is not a mystery how to end homelessness, and it's through housing first programs. So I wanted to put that in there too, that sometimes the stigmas make their way into what people think is the best way to address the problem. And it's not the full picture if you don't think about housing. The other side of it too is that there are far more people in housing who have substance use issues than who are not in housing.
Sure.
There are far more people in housing who have mental health issues than who are not in housing. And there are far more people in housing who are living in poverty than who are not. So homelessness is not these things. These are not the symptoms. Homelessness is a lack of housing, and that's just...
So, as you know, we focus around real estate. We talk about life quite a bit and big picture stuff. But a really smart guy once told me that the solution to homelessness is to put people in homes. And I'm not a smart guy, but A plus B equals C, and that really smart guy is sitting across the table from me. And so, that's all great. But if we can figure out a way to put these folks into homes or residence of some sort, then I agree with you 100%. The back end stuff comes around. But the 10-ton elephant in the room, right, is you see the folks at say,
Downtown Mall.
Downtown Mall,
that
at the
or-
intersections.
or
certain
at
intersections.
Whole Foods,
Yeah.
right? And I'm not so sure, and Anthony, you could probably give us some statistical data for
Sure.
that. But I think what you're saying, please don't let that represent what's really happening, right? So, I mean, that, because some of it is pretty aggressive. I've experienced it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm from New York, so
You're
not
used to it.
not a big deal for me,
Yeah.
right? But some people, it's an issue that we need to get around.
Yeah.
But I would encourage folks to kind of not look at that and maybe look at some of the statistics or data that if you can share
Sure.
to really prove that that's not
Yeah.
what's really going on out there.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Excuse me, just like the number of days or in homelessness is not a big number, right? On average, is that
right.
correct?
No, I mean, right. So,
Well, he said it.
yeah, about 70% of people who fall into homelessness over a year spend less than about 2 weeks homeless.
Was I supposed to?
The
pay
other
attention?
interesting thing too is that almost the same percentage of folks, I think it might be 66, but we can follow up on the exact, of people who fall into homelessness use a homeless service resource, a shelter or something like that. That is their first time experiencing homelessness in our community. Now we can't verify if maybe they've fallen to homelessness elsewhere, but that's the first time that they've used one of our resources. And we know that because we look at someone, we keep pretty,
Good data.
we keep, data is super important to the work we do. So we look at when someone came in for our service and we look at the period before up to 2 years. And again, that 66 to 70% of people, that was their first time with us as a community, which I think also goes against sometimes the perception of homelessness. It's the same people time and time again, and that's not true for the majority of folks who are homeless. And so, yeah, Keith, what you're saying is, I think, you know, not to look at the visible part and think that that's homelessness overall. And then, yes, it's not. I think the other important thing to just realize is that everyone just needs a safe place to call home.
Totally.
And so people panhandling, that's a tricky issue. It's complicated. We've done some research on it. We need to do more, honestly. But the research that we've done so far kind of shows that about half of the people who are panhandling in our community are truly, literally homeless, meaning like living outside in a tent or living in a shelter. But let me make it clear, no one who's panhandling in our community is doing well. They're panhandling because they're trying to meet basic needs. Many people who panhandle use the money to sleep in a hotel that night, and if they didn't have that money from panhandling, they'd probably be outside. But about half of the people are literally homeless from what we've found in our, from going out and talking with folks. So panhandling is a tricky issue, but
Sure.
Again, let me be clear, there's no one doing well with panhandling. And I see that idea come up time and time again, that there's like an organized ring of panhandlers that are, pooling their money and making money somehow, a lot of money, and that's just not what we found to
So
be
the data
true.
does not support that.
No.
Cool. So how does somebody find out about what you're doing, right? Website. And how can somebody get some more information about some of the statistics that you're pushing out? In other words, share information.
It's a great question. So one thing we've not done a great job with TJACH is being more public with our data about homeless services, and I really want to change that. We're actually partnering with UVA and with WNL. We have great students that are working with us to actually start pushing to our website more and more statistics about homelessness, how we're doing as a community, number of folks that were able to move into housing that month, for instance. We want to be more public with this information. So that's coming. Full transparency, our website got hacked not too long ago, so it's not up right now, but it will be up soon. And so that will just be tjach.org, TJACH.org. But yeah, our plan is to really be much more transparent about that. And again, I didn't really explain a lot about what TJACH does, so maybe I'll take an opportunity to do that.
That's my
Please
next
do.
question.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's a pretty woman sitting next to you
I
for
know.
a
I
reason.
feel like I'm hogging it, but
No, you're not. It's about you.
I'm listening.
All right.
I'm listening. This is
So-
good stuff.
So I'm the executive director. I'm the only staff person for TJACH right now. We have a board of directors as well, but we are not a direct service provider. We exist to empower and support the direct service providers in the community, including Haven, Pacham, which is a seasonal shelter, Region 10, mental health service provider, Families in Crisis, work with families, She Shelter, Salvation Army, on our own. So basically all the homeless service organizations that exist in the community, we work to try to empower them through grant funding and collaborative strategies that we implement. We manage a database system that all those partners use to keep track of services in the community, homeless services that are provided. And we do a lot of research and grant management, performance tracking, that type of thing. So we are not a direct service provider, but we do hold kind of the system level data about homelessness.
So and I'll let Yonna jump in a minute, but if somebody wants to get some information, let's assume I need some service somewhere, your organization would be a conduit to that service. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. For the information. We are not who you would reach out to
Where should
for the
I go?
actual service. But
I am about to become homeless. Who can I reach out to help me?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to go ahead and just ask just a very generic question that maybe, maybe useful for somebody. But every time we drive on, passing Whole Foods and you're stuck at the intersection, one of the intersections, so you have some folks there. Very friendly, by the way. I always greet them, make sure that they make eye contact with them. So what do you do? What's really the best thing to do? Because
that's a great question.
We've heard so many different things, and don't do this, but do that. And I see a lot of folks being very awkward about it. And I have to tell you, it took me a little bit of time to kind of get over that sort of guilt step.
Yeah.
So what do you do? What's really good thing to do?
I'm glad you asked that. I get asked that a lot, actually. And I think it's a real question. It comes up in our day-to-day lives. It's one of, in our community, it's one of the only times I've been reflecting on this that most people come face to face with people who are truly suffering, who are truly down and out. And that, not knowing how to deal with that is very common, and it makes sense because it's one of the only times where most people really see that face to face and are confronted with it. And the best advice that I usually give to people is to follow your intuition on the matter. I'm not going to say you should give money. I'm not going to say you shouldn't give money. If you feel compelled to do so, do so. But what I qualify it with is also that the issue is greater than giving something in that moment. So just to know that really that's not going to solve someone's situation in that moment. But it really, I think you just need to be honest with yourself, with your feelings. If you feel compelled to give money or food or whatever it may be, go for it. I'm not going to say you shouldn't do that. And if you don't feel compelled, don't feel bad about it either. I think you should follow what you feel is right. A lot of times what I suggest is that people ask it, hey, are you okay? First of all, if they're not looking good, ask them how they're doing. If someone is really not doing well, let's say it's super hot outside or super cold, and they need medical attention, that's something that you can do that's real. You can try to address that issue with them if you feel safe doing so and if you feel comfortable doing so. Another thing is just to say, hey, have you heard about a shelter? Do you have a safe place to stay tonight? You can ask, someone, do they know what to do if they need help? Most people most people who are panhandling around that I'm familiar with have been here for a little while. They usually know about the resources, but it doesn't hurt because there are new people in town sometimes, and they may not know the right place to go. And so, arm yourself with some of that information. I'm happy to kind of, I don't know if there's something we can put out along with this post, but I think that's a really great way
It's highly fluid.
It's educational.
So we can say, we have something called a street sheet, which is like a list of shelters.
Sarah Hill-Buchitsky just said, I carry the TJACH street sheet in my car.
There you go. That's a
Perfect.
It's a great suggestion, and I always say that that's a really great way to do it. Is say, hey, do you know what's going on? Here's a place where you can get help. So I know I'm not giving you a direct
No, I wasn't
answer,
looking for that.
But really, I think you should feel just fine doing what feels right to you. But in all cases, just be a human, be a kind human about it.
Golden rule.
Yeah, and the other thing, I think about too is like I'm actually glad that people see this in our community because it exists, it's real, and if we don't see it collectively, then we forget about it and we push it aside. And homelessness is one of those issues that does get pushed aside, literally sometimes through policing, people asking homeless people to move on or move out of public spaces. And we also do it mentally because we feel uncomfortable with that situation. That's unhealthy, I think, for a community to continue to do that. We need to really address and come face to face with the fact that there are people in our community living in these situations, and it doesn't have to be like that. But the more and more we want to ignore, and the more and more we feel empowered to ignore, push it away, I think that doesn't help the issue. So, see people, and be a kind human about it.
So, complicated question. Thank you, Yonna, for
Yeah,
asking.
that's a great
and
question.
Anthony, this is a hard question to answer. So, do as the heart feels, right? Do the right thing, to use a Spike Lee quote. Did I get that right?
I think you did.
There you go.
Good job.
And know that the issue is bigger.
I just wanted to say, I think that's the most
Well,
important
and
to
I
think
think
of
the one thing I wanted to add to that is much like everything that you and I do and Jerry does and Yonna does, but I know that you and I sit on a bunch of public bodies and boards. Get involved. If you
absolutely.
If you can't, if you're not comfortable with what you just proposed, there are multiple organizations that you can get involved. Faith-based organizations, your organization. Figure out a way to give back. That is extremely important to Yonna and I, that we give back, and we give back as often and as hard as we can. So if you can't, hand that sheet out, then log on to your website and say, how can I help?
Yeah, absolutely.
In a couple weeks.
Exactly. In a couple of weeks. It is not.
just give them
It is
a
not
little
working
time.
right now.
Just go on the feed, and then we'll figure it
Just
out.
give
No, but I'm glad you brought that up, Keith, because I get asked that a lot too. It's like, what's the best way to be a part of the solution?
Sure.
And honestly, best way is to give money to the issue. We need resources. We need financial resources to pay for housing services, which end homelessness. We need financial resources to pay case managers that provide the supportive services in housing. That's one of the most powerful ways that you as a community member can be a part of the solution, is doing that, and volunteering at these organizations as well is also fantastic and highly needed as well. But I don't want to beat around the issue. If you feel compelled, give money to these programs, because it really helps. So
We have a lot of comments coming in. We also got to thank some sponsors.
Sure.
This portion of the program, thanks to Roy Wheeler Realty Company. Roy Wheeler, the firm in Charlottesville and Central Virginia with the most tenure and longevity. Keith Smith.
Yeah, so Michael Guthrie will be sitting in this seat next week, and
I'm going to miss you. Seriously.
yeah, well,
I have not missed a Real Talk.
you have not, but I will.
I know. You're going to be in Portland.
Yeah, so
I'm literally going to miss you.
I think that's called Catholic guilt that you dump on
I'm
me,
doing
but
it. My
I'm
mom
not.
does it well. I learned it from her.
That's it. Oh,
We'll
wait.
hug later.
Okay, we always do.
We'll hug later. But he's going to be talking about the new car third quarter report, so I'm really excited about that, and I'll be watching from
The West Coast.
Portland.
I'll be in Portland at that point. Yeah.
We have a lot of questions coming in
Sure.
for Anthony. First, Michael is watching, and he says, I'm very much enjoying this conversation and hearing how we can help homelessness in our community. Anthony, thank you for sharing the best ways to support the people we see in the street corners around town. We have Keith. Lee Hughes is watching from Colliers International. Roger Voinze from Remax. Ray Cadell's got a couple questions for us that we're going to get. Adrian, so I'm going to throw two questions to you. Adrian has this question: where can I get the TJACH street sheet? I love that you're discussing this topic. Thank you so much. That's the first question. The second question I think is a good one, and you've touched on this briefly. How do we deal, this is from Ray, how do we deal with the local urban legend that some panhandlers are part of an organized effort, bust in from out of town, and debunk the stigma that these aren't actually people in the community? You've touched on that already here.
Yeah.
So throw both to you.
All right, awesome. So again, website is not operational right now, but you can go to the Havens website and also get a lot of information about similar information, and that's thehaven.org. But check back in a couple weeks. Street sheet is on our website. You can download it.
What is the street sheet?
It's a listing. It's a paper. We tried to put everything basically on a piece of paper about places to get food.
Okay, gotcha.
Thankfully, there is a place to get breakfast, lunch, and dinner basically almost every day of the week. I think some dinner's not available maybe on some of the weekends, but there are a lot of great programs both through day shelters. Sorry, Keith, did you want to go?
No, go ahead. Go.
Day shelters, Salvation Army, the Haven, and then churches in the community provide meals. And so it's a listing of everywhere you can get food, where you can stay in shelter at night, where you can get connected to other resources as well. So it's just a listing of resources that folks who are experiencing homelessness would need or might need, and where to get it.
So I think, and Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we can help a little bit on Real Talk. We reach out to about
A little over 253,000 people.
253,000. So we can
you-
upload
can I
a
just
PDF
put- yeah.
of
Oh,
that
perfect.
on
Let's
the
do that.
feed. So
Yeah.
if you get that to us, we'll ask Judah to do that.
do
We'll
that.
put it in the package, Judah. Okay, we're good with that? Absolutely.
Judah's nodding his head, by the way, who
Yeah.
can't see off camera.
The street sheet, Sarah, just put the street sheet in the feed right now.
There you
Oh,
go,
thank you,
Sarah.
Sarah.
Thank you,
It's
Sarah.
literally on the feed as we speak.
Johnny on
Go,
the spot,
Sarah.
Sarah.
I love that. Sarah Kuczynski, thank you.
She's an awesome
The other
real estate agent,
question
too, by the
about
way.
a panhandling ring. So I want to be honest, I'm not, well, how should I say this?
Just say it. There's no rules here, brother. Literally, there's no rules.
Just 253,000 people listening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
all.
We have no
Yeah.
FCC rules.
No.
here.
I just mean, I'm trying to say I'm not an expert on panhandling as an issue.
Yeah.
We've done research. We've gone out and spoken to people panhandling. We've interviewed them about what's going on. And from those experiences, we found no evidence. And so if it exists, I would be fascinated by the issue, and I would hope that there'd be a documentary made, because that's one of the most interesting things that I would love to learn about.
That's
A
interesting.
panhandling ring.
Entrepreneur.
I know. I really I would love to find out if that's actually true. We have not seen any data or any research.
I would think
that
if you
showed
have the vision and entrepreneurial
Yeah,
skill
I-
set
I
to
just
do that,
wanted to say-
you're probably not going to focus on panhandling.
Yeah.
I just want to
No.
say, why would you be doing that?
Right.
Yes.
Right? Because that requires a lot of skill and vision
It
and
does.
organization.
But I think there's probably some data
Well,
that
I
has gone
I
out.
think you're lacking a little bit of specifics. You've actually did an official research on this with teams. And
We have, yeah, we
I
go
mean,
out.
This was a rather exhaustive, I don't know if that word came out right, extensive,
Yeah.
that's the right word I'm looking for.
It can be exhausting work too.
And
no doubt.
exhausting
Yeah,
work.
absolutely.
Where you went out over if I remember, because you gave an awesome presentation to the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission about
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
And it was rather lengthy, wasn't it? Was it not just like one day going out? This was a rather lengthy process, right?
So every year we do something called the annual Point in Time Homeless Count, which is a nationwide project. Every community in the country does one of these efforts to interview everybody experiencing homelessness in your community, or that's the goal, is to interview everybody experiencing homelessness. And so, yeah, we talked to a lot of people panhandling, and that's where we got that information about half the people we've talked to were literally homeless. We found no evidence of organized rings. Now, I think sometimes what confuses people is, people who panhandle are organized in that they know each other,
Right, and doing
I
it in
just wanted to-
shifts.
and yeah, so
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that there's some ulterior,
Network.
crime boss.
They haven't created
out
an
there.
LLC and they don't have
Yeah,
an
yeah,
operational
exactly.
agreement.
There's no
Exactly.
pickups.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's I think what I'll say.
So I
about
think that seeing that kind of cooperation,
Yeah.
one might interpret that as
Yeah, and that makes. I
as
mean,
that.
I can understand that. Sociologically, this is just a fascinating issue that I'd love to delve into more on if I had more free time. Honestly, I'm just fascinated by public's perception of people panhandling. It triggers something in a lot of people in our community, in communities in general. That's just fascinating for me. I really think it's an interesting sociological phenomenon. I will say too that. I think part of the question was how can we combat that stigma? So I think the one way we can combat it is honestly doing more work that we talked about. I mean, we do that kind of outreach focused during 1 week, and so really there's a way to know about it, and it's just you go out and you talk to people over time, and you report back and you figure out more about what's going on. And I think we just need to do that. It's just sometimes we're resource constrained to do that, but there is a way to find out about it. You just go ask people what's up.
Yonna Smith.
I'm
trying to work you
I
in
have
here.
to. I have to agree. I have to agree with you. I mean, this is for me. It's just a teaching moment, and it comes back to the human aspect. I do want to ask a question: is homelessness multi-generational?
Ooh, good question.
Great question. And yes,
It is,
It
because
is.
I've seen sort of some
can be.
Can
I
be.
guess is the best way to put it. And it's related to, it's related to a lot of different issues in our community that perpetuate generational poverty, racist policies, systemic racism. These are all things that contribute to the same people staying in this cycle. And there is certainly a racial element to homelessness. I don't have the exact statistics but I think Charlottesville maybe is about 13% identify as Black or African American. The number of folks who are in poverty percentage locally is about 22% identify as Black or African American, but in the homeless service system it's 44%. So you can see how it's just stepping up, significantly overrepresented in the population, people of color. So that's an important issue that we need to address. We actually just finished a pretty extensive racial equity research project of our homeless service system in partnership with UVA, which is great, UVA's Equity Atlas program. And Charlotte McClintock, shout out to Charlotte, she's amazing. She's the student that did the research for us. And so now our board is really kind of just trying to really absorb the findings and then address, figure out how we can best address that in our homeless service system. But yeah, it's very related to poverty. It's related to a lot of these things that keep the same people in poverty. And so, yeah, one of my first jobs in this realm, I was a database manager for a homeless shelter. My office was in a closet at a family shelter.
Wow.
And it was very eye-opening for me and very, foundational for my experience and for my career. And one of the things that was really eye-opening and depressing was because I was dealing with the data, this young woman came in and I saw in the system that she had been there as a child,
Oh, wow.
with her family at the same shelter.
Wow.
And, that happened a number of times, that people showed back up into homeless shelters when they were adults, but who had also been there when they were children with their family. So, yeah, there is certainly that issue. I'm glad you brought that up.
Let's get some sponsor love in here. Pearl certification, doing some big time things to get homes ready for sale and getting on the market. Keith.
They are, and I'm excited to report. I don't think even I had an opportunity to talk about this, but their head of sales are going to be coming in on the 22nd of November, and we're gonna talk a little bit about the awesomeness that they bring to the community. Yonna and I love them. They're great at helping certifying homes and putting them into the energy space, and we're thankful that they're sponsoring the show.
I love it. I love it. This question's coming in on the feed. Throw it out to everybody. This is about, we see a lot of the homeless population and or panhandlers aggregated or congregating on the downtown mall. I think that is a byproduct of having, food options like the Haven right around the corner that are serving food around, breakfast, lunch, dinner. The question that's coming in is the word manage the homeless the right word? And then the byproduct of that question is from a lot of the businesses on the mall that are like saying, let's get the benches off the mall. Or let's move the food providers away from the mall. Not necessarily trying to do, to shuffle the homeless away, but perhaps keeping it away from where tourists and the heartbeat of Charlottesville are. This is an interesting topic.
It is an interesting topic.
Anywhere you want to go on that one? Because I'm sure you deal with this a lot.
I do, yeah. So I'll first say from business owners in downtown mall that, I think sometimes there can be this idea that they're uncaring about the issue, and I don't want to perpetuate that idea. when people sleep on the mall, okay, because of homelessness, people have to sleep outside sometimes. And they also don't have a place to use the bathroom when they need to. And sometimes our business owners have to deal with the products of that. And no one should have to deal with that issue. So these are real issues that they're dealing with as well. So I totally, that's a very valid concern, and it's something that should be addressed. But the way to address it is by ending homelessness through housing programs, because then people wouldn't have to do those activities on the downtown mall. So I just wanted to say that first, that there is a way. I think we all want the same thing. We don't want for the products of this issue to be present. We don't want people to have to spend the night homeless. I think we all agree on that, which is important. The other side of it is that people congregate on the downtown mall who are homeless for the same reasons that people who aren't homeless congregate on the downtown mall. It's a public space. It's beautiful, and it's designed for that purpose.
Yeah.
And I think
It is.
that's
Interestingly, the DBAC, which I'm a part of, does not want the benches on the mall, which I vehemently am opposed to.
Oh, I agree with
Yeah,
that.
have benches on the mall to chill on.
I walk up and down the mall looking for a place to sit
For a
down
bench.
to send a text.
I'm glad
Or an
you
email.
said that. Yeah.
I would be against that big time.
Right, and they're removing them because of the influence of the DBAC. And it's strictly because I'm in the meetings, the DBAC leadership saying, we don't want the benches because we're fearful that this will lead to more congregation
Yeah, right.
of panhandlers downtown.
So they're not looking, in my opinion, they're not looking at this thing kind of
Right.
well.
We're not seeing the forest through the trees.
Well, they're looking at it. Look, we don't ever throw anybody
Right,
underneath
we're
the
not
bus.
doing that. Yeah,
a bus
yeah.
here, but they just, the answer is put them in a.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
exactly.
more
No, yeah,
housing.
right,
This
right, right.
is where it
you
goes
know,
back
it's-
to.
yeah.
Not that complicated. Removing benches is not going to solve the problem. They're just going to
Yes.
congregate someplace else.
Thank you, Keith.
Right. So, but I do want to pivot a
Yeah,
little bit
please.
because I've been really itching to talk about this veterans program
Yeah,
we're going to put
yeah.
on, and so. But I do want to jump backwards to how to combat panhandling. Just like and share this show, like and share this show, like and share this show, and get out in front of people.
Yeah.
Because the answer that you gave was an excellent answer, and I think if we can populate that out in the magic of social media, that may be helpful to change
good.
some of that. But to go back to the veterans program, I believe we had coffee once. You're trying to hire somebody, correct?
That's
So
correct.
Let's
This
talk a
is
little bit
exciting.
about that, and maybe somebody's listening might be able to help you out in that department.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you, Keith. So currently, I'll start from more of a foundation. We, as part of the work that we do, we track the number of people experiencing homelessness at any point in time. We try to keep that list real time as best as we can. And so we track the number of veterans who are kind of homeless at any given time. And right now, we are aware of about 16 veterans who are homeless in our community, which, relatively speaking, is a number that we can
Manage.
get ahead of. And and it's not that that's a bad way to put it, but I would qualify that word because I think that was part of the question too,
was
is
part of the
like
question.
manage. So
Yeah.
I think it's a good opportunity.
Yeah.
I think manage, the reason I don't prefer that term is that
I've gotten
it's,
in trouble for using that word.
yeah, well,
Right.
I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
It makes, I get why, but I think the problem with it is that it's a little bit, in my opinion, a bit defeatist. It's like,
It marginalizes a human. The word man.
Yeah.
It's too
That's true.
controlling.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah.
It's too controlling.
Yeah.
How do you?
Yeah,
you know.
and so,
I'll never use it
we
again.
feel,
I'm sorry.
yeah, there you go. So what we use is we
I
say
feel so
we can
deflated
end
over here. I'm in
veteran
trouble.
homelessness, right? But what we mean by that is that we don't believe that we can prevent everybody from falling into homelessness. Not in our current economic structure. That's just not a reality yet. Hopefully, it could be at some point in the future. But when someone does fall into homelessness, what we mean when we say ending or reaching a functional end of homelessness is having the support systems in place and the housing stock in place to help people move back into housing within 30 days. And what that would do is kind of interesting. What that does is it makes chronic homelessness or people remaining homeless over time non-existent. And so you wouldn't see what we see today. in the same way, because people who fall into homelessness would be able to get back into housing quickly. And that ends that cycle, right? And that's what's important. So that's what we mean when we talk about ending homelessness, is that having a system in place to get people back into housing quickly. And so we have been a part of a program called Built for Zero, which is a nationwide initiative by Community Solutions. It's an awesome organization. Shout out to Community Solutions and the Built for Zero team. They help communities work through data issues, work through strategy, work through system level changes to improve your ability to help people get back into housing and also prevent people from falling into homelessness. So they really help us in the work that we do, and they really believe in us locally in Charlottesville and the surrounding counties that we can get to that functional end of veteran homelessness. And they've invested in us, and that's why we're going to be able to hire this housing navigator for homeless veterans. That's what we've put up, and the reason we focused in on that as one of the key pieces for us getting to that goal is that because we have so few veterans who are experiencing homelessness, it's far too many as well, but it's a number that we can get down.
Oh, you almost used the word.
I know. You're right. I almost did. I didn't though. A number that we can reduce to less than 2 is the goal, right? Yeah. Is because for veterans, thankfully, there are a lot of good resources for housing and support services in our community and nationwide through the VA. I really have to support and commend the VA for investing heavily in veteran homelessness. And I think the important thing is that when you look at the data nationwide, it shows that if you invest in this issue with housing-focused programming, you decrease veteran homelessness.
So you're probably aware of this program, and the city escapes me, but there was a city that did a tiny house project.
Yeah, there's a number of them actually.
Thank you. And
wasn't that the one that we had at the regional housing seminar?
No. But this, I believe it was Minneapolis or something like this. I can't remember the city. And Yonna, there's a reason why Yonna's sitting across the table from me, because I'm about ready to say something that will get me into trouble, because I really want to help next year with this. I really want to put this veteran housing and this 17 solving this.
Did you say you were about to volunteer?
I'm saying about ready to volunteer. Look, she rolls her eyes. Thank you.
Brownie points. Brownie points.
Yonna said I have to come off of some things. She didn't say I couldn't add. But I want to help, and I think we have resources and we have connections that a project like that is perfect. And you can find a place where we can put 17 tiny homes on it, a couple 300 square feet. It wouldn't be long term, right? It would be just like what would your vision be? So if I walked into you and say, hey, let's figure out how to do this, what would the scenario look like?
And then add the crossings piece. Is it the crossing?
Yeah. So that's the solution. Is permanent housing that someone can live in. That's their home.
Sure.
And so, tiny houses, like I think they're really cool. I would like to eventually build a tiny house or a minimal house for myself. But I think sometimes the trick with some of those ideas is that they really aren't sufficient housing.
Scalable.
And that's
long term, because my thinking was not long term.
So,
and you've corrected that.
Yeah, so that's the data shows locally and nationwide that transitional housing, for the most part, can work for certain populations. Like youth can be really successful for, families with children it can also be successful for. It can be tricky. Transitional housing is tricky. That when you have that temporary place that has, usually transitional housing programs have a lot of requirements like sobriety or engagement in support services. Their outcomes are just not good when you have that temporary thing. And what we realize is you don't need to have a temporary time frame. If someone that can be their home, you've solved homelessness for that person. So
I like it.
And so anyways, it's just kind of, it's just direct. Like how can we be more direct and simple with our approach and really focus on that housing and then the supportive side, the supportive
So you and I have
services.
been talking about this for quite some time, and this conversation totally and maybe it's somebody else, but it totally changed my thinking on this because I kept on thinking transitional.
Good. I'm glad we've had this
Permanent.
conversation.
And that's not apparent. I'm not thinking
permanent.
right. So
Permanent housing. It's the direct
cool.
way to the goal, and it's also proven to be the most successful. And so the crossings is an example of that. Down the street, we're blessed to have the crossings in our
Right across
community.
from Boto's by Wendy's and McDonald's.
Exactly.
correct.
Yeah.
Across the
At
street.
Fourth and Preston.
And to add to that, if you did not know that, it just looks like a regular apartment
It does,
building.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's an apartment complex, and that's the other beautiful thing. It is just an apartment complex.
That's exactly right.
Half of the units are reserved for people who were formerly chronically homeless, and half the units are just affordable housing. So it's a great model because it not only provides just general affordable housing for individuals, which, by the way, is one of the greatest needs. I think the Housing Authority's wait list for individuals is like the longest portion of their wait list. But it also provides housing for folks who are on our streets for years and years. And we're right now engaged in research with UVA and with the jail and with fire and EMS to really kind of learn more about our local housing programs and how successful they were at mitigating use or overuse of the emergency department or use of the jail. And we haven't finished that research, but anecdotally, Commander Coomer of the jail talked about the crossings when it opened in 2012. They had a team set up to try to reduce the number of frequent utilizers of the jail. And they had this all set up, and then the crossings opened, and they realized they weren't seeing the same folks come into the jail anymore. And that's awesome. That's what we want to see because
So that's proof.
housing.
What is the term that you like to use?
Pop.
Can you
Proof of performance.
proof of
There you
performance?
go. Absolutely. And so that's awesome. It's the way to solve homelessness is through housing and supportive services. That's the key. It can't just be housing alone.
Yeah, it has
I want to
to be
be clear
healthy.
about that too. What really makes these programs work is that at the crossings there's case managers on site, and that's crucial. So yep,
Anthony, this has been a great conversation.
it has.
It was extremely important to Yonna and I to get this subject matter out. It's a little heavy, right? But I kind of just really want to thank you for the opportunity. We're going to have a little fun here in about a minute or
Okay.
two.
Before we do that, may I just ask another question? Because
Sure.
I think this is very
You're the
important.
boss.
Sources of funding. Do you have a list that we can possibly, kind of have the public see that, if somebody wants to make,
A donation.
donation or something
yeah,
like that,
sure.
because you spoke of financial support, which is
Yeah,
which
why don't we put up our list of partners that we work with in this
please.
work, and you can give
Yeah.
to all of them or give to one of them. We can link to all their websites so you can learn more.
If that's, I think that makes
That's
That's
why I
great.
say she's my better 7/8.
That's a great idea. Thank you. That
Well,
would be
thank you. I mean,
fantastic
this
to do
is
that.
just
Yeah.
so more questions.
Can I
but
finish
think
real
we have
quick about
enough
the
time.
veteran program
Sure,
too?
sure.
So I didn't finish the thought that I had, which was that because there's a lot of services for veterans, for almost all of the people who are on the list of veterans currently experiencing homelessness, we have basically a housing plan in place. But one of the limiting factors is finding housing quick enough to get those veterans out of homelessness and into housing before another veteran who becomes homeless comes on. So basically, we've been kind of just at status quo. We've been about 15 to 18 for the past 6 months, and we want to get over that hump. And so because we have the ability to help pay for housing for most of the veterans on our list, but it's just slow in finding housing, that's why we've decided to try to hire this housing navigator to really expedite that process, work with landlords, and try to bring in more folks into this process to get us down. We can totally do it, and we're going to do it, and I'm glad that you've agreed to help out.
So there's a ton of realtors that watch this show.
Yeah.
2 of us sitting at the table. This is the space that we deal in. So offline, maybe we'll have a conversation. Maybe there's some way that we can help point somebody in the right direction.
Fantastic.
And open the door. But we're going to have fun.
Okay.
All
Let's
right.
have fun.
We're going to run the gauntlet. But before we do that, I just want to thank the folks
Thank
at
you.
MarieBette.
Thank you.
We're all drinking MarieBette coffee.
Thank you.
We all had MarieBette breakfast this morning, and I'm just super proud that they're sponsoring it. Jason is a great guy, and his husband Patrick's a great guy, and those are kind of folks that give back to organizations.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Like
Let's thank Towe Insurance,
Towe, yeah,
First Heritage Mortgage,
Yeah.
Thank
and
you.
Charlottesville Settlement Company as well.
Yeah, and they're just all awesome people in the real estate space. And if you want to make some magic happen and buy and sell, reach out to Yonna and I, and we will point you in front of these folks, and some great magic will happen. But we're going to have fun now. This is the best
We're gonna run
part
the
of the
gauntlet
show.
here.
So we're going to take all
I don't know what that
this-
means, but let's do
Oh,
it.
We're
you're
going to
go-
fire questions at you.
That
You
means-
cannot think about the answer.
All this stuff gets turned over,
First thing that comes to mind.
and we're going to talk about Anthony.
Real
You got a
quick,
question
thanks
ready
for
to
all the
go?
great questions that came in.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for having me. This
We're not
is-
done
It's-
yet.
it's-
I know, but I'm
It's
just.
mind opening.
No time, so
No. Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to dodge the gauntlet.
He knows me well enough to know that nothing good is about ready to happen.
All right, bring the gauntlet. I'm ready.
We should go ladies first on the
Of
question.
course.
Okay,
of
so
course.
what's the question?
Oh, you have to ask him a question.
Oh, I see.
Should we go Keith and I first? So you
Yeah.
have a
You
question?
go.
Yeah.
You go.
Okay, you're going to go?
Let me do it first because this is going to be a little higher level.
Okay.
So no, it's a
It's
normal
just-
question, but I know
Second
Anthony a
cup of
long time,
coffee.
and I'm anxious to hear this answer. So, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given, and why?
Oh man.
Can't think. Gotta just say.
Right off the top of your head.
Okay, protect your peace.
Wow.
Yeah. My teacher, that was his advice for many people, to protect your peace, because you can't truly be of service if you aren't embodying peace yourself. Truly, I believe
You can't help yourself. You can't help anybody
exactly.
else.
So do what you need to do to be in a good place,
Wow.
so that you can provide and you can share that energy with the people around you. And that's one of the, I think, the most powerful ways we can be of service to each other is being peaceful, content ourselves, and that just, you can't help but that wear off on people around you. So there you
Anthony,
go.
I have to tell you, you did not disappoint me.
That was probably the best answer
That's-
to that
that's
question.
amazing.
I was just thinking that's
Yeah.
probably one of the best answers I ever had.
Well,
we ask every.
it's not me. It's my teacher. So
Well,
I'm
no,
but
accepting
you
it.
answered the question well.
You answered
There you
it
go.
well.
Favorite restaurant in Charlottesville and why?
Jeez.
You can't say MarieBette because we meet each other.
I know.
I can't say where you Favorite restaurant and the dish you get there.
So this is bad, but I'm totally blanking. What's the pizza place?
Lampo?
Lampo, yes. Lampo.
Yeah,
it's
Lampo's amazing.
It's so good. And all of their pizzas are amazing, but my friend said, "Have you ever tried the veggie panini?" And I didn't until I did, which is usually how that works. But anyways, I tried it.
That's the one.
Dude, your first answer just went downhill.
Lampo and the veggie panini.
See, I didn't
Is your
try it
answer.
until I tried it.
That is a total Keith Smith answer that you just.
The veggie panini at Lampo is awesome.
Gotta remember that.
Try it.
Okay. Yonna Smith?
You're music centric.
Yes.
Who's the most influential musician in your life?
Good question. Maybe Beck.
Oh,
Actually.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Beck is
Love
great.
Beck.
Yeah.
Gotta say, not a huge fan of his latest stuff, but still, his breadth of work is so good and very influential on me. So
So I'll tell you how old school I'm thinking Jeff Beck. And
Right.
You were
No,
thinking
no,
a different
it's a
Beck.
different-
I am thinking.
I'm thinking
Yeah,
Jeff
I-
Beck, the guitarist,
Yeah.
1970s, and you're thinking
I even know
something
that.
completely different.
I even know that.
Do you know Beck?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
I do.
I have no
As a
idea, but I'm going to
hello.
look it up. as soon as
Yeah,
we're
Beck's
done.
awesome.
Yes.
What's your next question?
Man,
Go the go-to one. I love that one.
yeah, the island one?
Yeah, the island one.
Okay. So actually, this would be an interesting question. So you're on a deserted island.
Okay.
This is a bit of a trick question. You're on a deserted island. And you're only allowed to bring one book with you. I think I know the answer that you're going to give me, but what would that book be?
Yoga Sutras by Patanjali.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I was totally going with the Bible. That's what I had in my head. That I figured that's what you were going to go with.
Sorry, it's my Bible.
Yeah.
So there you
Oh,
go.
everybody
Yoga
has.
Sutras. Yep.
So I tell everybody who answers that question, mine is the Marine Corps Survival Manual. So
There you go. Oh, that's
if
that's
I'm
really
on a
smart.
deserted
Yeah.
island, I better know how to survive on it.
Beer, wine, or spirits for you?
Scotch.
Okay. So do you have a go-to distillery or a go-to brewery or vineyard in the area? That you like? Scotch is good. I like Scotch.
Scotch is good. I haven't been to any of the distilleries yet. I need to do that, local distilleries. But
you can walk to one from here, not too far away.
Oh, yeah?
Walked it too.
Which one?
Vital Spirits.
Yep.
And there's also one on Woolen Mills.
That's right.
That's awesome. I'm a big fan of Three Notch.
Three Notch is my favorite too. Three Notch
Yeah.
is amazing. Yonna Smith, you got one? Ready to go?
Absolutely. Most favorite movie that you're gonna see over and over and over and over and over again, and you never get bored.
This is a cop-out, but I'm going to say Hayao Miyazaki's animated films.
Wow.
So I'll just put all of them in there.
Yeah,
These are really
Judah
good.
says,
Judas way smarter than us. So
Yeah.
Judas way
If you
smarter
haven't
than us.
if you haven't seen any of his films, they're fantastic. You probably have like
No, but I'm gonna see one.
Totoro.
I felt
Princess
very inadequate.
Mononoke.
Okay,
They're really
we're done.
Said Forrest Gump or Goodfellas. Damn
We're
it.
I'm gonna come
done.
back to that because that's a good one. I'm gonna watch them.
Cute. Which
Good,
one's
yeah,
your
you should.
favorite,
They're
Judah?
good.
Scream it out over there.
Oh man, let's see. Nausicaa.
That's my favorite too. Good choice. Nausicaa, The Valley of the Wind.
There you go.
Great
I was
film.
going to. Mine's Casablanca, but I mean,
Mine's Goodfellas.
Goodfellas. We talked about.
You have another one for him before we wrap?
I think we've had him in the hot seat long enough.
This is fun. I want to do more.
I just,
You killed it.
You can come back. We can do
Anthony,
this every time.
you know personally, you mean the world to me, and thank you for
being
everything
here.
that you do. Thank you for being on all these commissions and boards, and thank you for being kind to me when I'm the chairman, and when I get that little look from him, I go, "Oops, guess I'm going a little overboard on it." But just to throw a little,
You get that look a lot.
I
Keith.
do get that look a lot. Yeah, well, it's a look of love.
It is a look of love. I think Yonah's giving it to you now.
Yeah, that's the reason
I
I'm
don't wanna
looking.
look.
That's the reason
I
I'm
don't wanna
looking.
look.
That's the reason I'm looking down.
Me too.
Oh my
So I
God,
would-
where are we going with this, guys?
Who did I?
We spent too much time together, Yonah.
Yeah. So Yonna was on the phone this morning with her sister
Okay.
in Vienna, Austria,
Ooh.
who watches our show.
Cool.
She does.
That's awesome.
And I thanked her. I said, "Thank you so much for watching the show all the way over in Vienna, Austria." And she goes, "You and Jerry are so cute."
My sister said that, so I hope you
But,
have a chance to meet her.
You didn't make a gin joke today.
No gin today. We've got a busy work day after
Okay.
this. But one of the folks that may not know, Anthony and I are sitting on a stakeholders committee to help write some new affordable housing program and ordinance and stuff for Albemarle County. So thank you for being on that. It's going to be a lot of hard work, but thank you for doing that.
And thank
but
you.
this meant the world to me. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
This
Did a
is
heck of a
great.
job.
Fun.
Thanks so much. This is a lot of fun.
Very, very educational.
And
learned
thanks
a
for
lot.
bringing light to this important issue. Really appreciate it.
Oh, I
Absolutely.
think-
Give those links to Judah, and we'll get them in the package. Anything that you want to see in the package. We'll archive the show in totality on ilovecville.com. We will syndicate it for 30 days across the I Love CVille network, which is 17 Facebook pages, 17 Twitter accounts, an e-newsletter that goes out every morning to about 108,000 inboxes at 11 a.m. We have the third largest Instagram community in Central Virginia. We will turn the audio into a podcast on iTunes, and you can catch the show in its visual and audio form on ilovecville.com. Just as a suggestion, as an advertising guy myself, if you'd ran an ad campaign kind of through the eyes of a success story, where it was video and photo, the flip book of their trials and tribulations, I think that would really humanize, localize, and personalize the mission and the organization. Jerry Miller, Keith Smith, Yonna Smith, Anthony crushed it today.
Thank you.
We will be back next Friday at 10:15, missing Keith
I will be out in Portland
with Michael Guthrie.
working on affordable housing
But
issues.
we will miss you, and
Thank you.
we will watch. Enjoy your morning, guys. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. That was
Done.
nice job.
Thank you.
Nice job.
Thank you, Anthony.
Nice job for your
I like
time.
your cut.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It's with me every morning. 160 ounces of coffee a day.
That was a lot of fun.
160 ounces, yeah.
160.
160.